together. Right, okay. What's the situation regarding El Animal, Mr. Filip Hrgovic?
El Animal, look, we had that very disappointing Hunter story, obviously winning the purse bid, doing the contracts, and then he pulled out. He pulled out for a show that was then cancelled. So, you know, there is some karma on this planet. But that's in the past. He's back in the States since the weekend, fighting August 28th in Los Angeles, and we are getting ready to announce the opponent, you know, next few days. So he's just, you know, the fact that we've been through those rankings, and it's not just us, you know, Eddie's putting, to be fair to Eddie, he's putting a lot of work on that as well. But we you know, we go through that ranking, and it's like, you know, 1 to 10 of the world ranking have turned down the fight for great money. You know, date's not an issue. We got people calling them out who then, you know, get an offer and then, you know, run 100 miles, come up with every story known to mankind. There's not one in the top 10 who've taken the opportunity. That's one fight away. Let's just make this very clear. One fight away from fighting Anthony Joshua for the heavyweight championship of the world. That's what it is. And anyone who knows boxing knows the IBF, they do not mess around with their mandatories. Ask Tyson Fury.
The strictest, we know that.
Ask Tyson Fury. He beat Klitschko. Well, Klitschko was undefeated for 10 years. On Monday morning, when he was probably still celebrating, he got a letter that he was being stripped. Yeah? So we know that this is, it's not like, oh, well, you might get a mandatory down the road in 3,000 days, yeah? But, you know, this is signed, sealed and delivered. And by the way, that mandatory is going to be due soon, because the Pulev fight was the last mandatory. That was in December. So I think it's 10 months with the IBF. I'm not exactly sure, but it's within a year, let's put it that way. It will be called. You can get a special exception, but within 6 months, that fight happens, you know. And with the IBF, by the way, there's no step asides possible or something like that. It is what it is, you know. It's there. So I don't get it, you know, because on paper, El Animal has not fought anyone who I would say is fantastic yet, but everyone seems to know what he can do. Yeah, from his huge time in the amateurs, the semi-pros with the WSB. And, you know, it's almost like the reputation precedes him, and it's tough. It's been tough, but we're almost there now. So, you know, but can't wait to get him out.
Wow. Okay. These are the words of Kel Sauerland. Okay. And of course, he is the promoter of Filip Hrgovic. And as you heard this guy explain, that they've called everyone out on the top 10 on the IBF. Okay. Now I want to name some names of you guys. Of course, we know the champion of the IBF that holds that belt is Anthony Joshua, amongst others. But everybody in the top 10, okay? And it's really 9, but let me go down the list, because according to Mr. Kel has called out every one of these guys, or guys have called him out, and they have approached every one of these guys for good money. Okay? And the fight didn't happen. Now get this. First, Joe Joyce. And okay, Joe Joyce, all right, we have to look at why he didn't. Joe Joyce was in a situation where he could avenge his loss in the amateurs to Alexander Usyk. So, okay, I kind of get that, because, you know, he was high on the totem pole for breaking the socket of Mr. Triple D. Okay, I get that. Next, you know, he could have been on the WBO route, so I get that. So the next up is Luis Ortiz. Now, Luis Ortiz comes to mind when you think of what? You think of his 2 attempts at the WBC, which he's still ranked high on the WBC, but he is ranked number 9 and they reached out to him and his team, and you heard crickets also. Okay, so the question you ask yourself, he's supposed to be so hungry for a fight. Where have he been? Filip Hrgovic versus Luis Ortiz would have been a great fight, okay? Especially for the number one slot, mind you, because the number one slot is vacant. So whoever fights for that, they have the opportunity to become the next mandatory for that first slot, and nobody wants to take it. And when I mean nobody, yes, I'm including Luis Ortiz. Number 8, Andy Ruiz. Now, Andy Ruiz is a guy that he just had a tough fight, comeback fight with Mr. Areola. Chris Areola, he was dropped once, almost dropped twice. He, had a lot of rust. He hadn't been in the ring since late 19. So, I kind of get that. But then, IBF, if he says he wants another Joshua clash, he could have followed the cab of Mr. Pulev, okay? Because Pulev got his opportunity. All right, so that's another name that has a big question mark by it. Okay, next, Tony Yoka. Okay, Tony Yoka is the French fighter, which I think that would be a good fight due to the high extensive amateur career of both guys, Hrgovic and Yoka. And I think that would be a good fight, but they reached out to them, according to Kel, and again, crickets, okay? Number 6, and I don't know how he got there, Aget Kabayel. And we know Aget Kabayel was the chosen opponent for Tyson the Gypsy King Fury after his separation from Deontay Wilder temporarily from not wanting to fight the trilogy fight. And all of a sudden, that fight fell through. So I don't know at what point that fight fell through or what not. But this is the seventh month in the year. So that is another guy that could have took a fight with Filip Hrgovic, okay? Now coming in at number 5, Mr. Spidey himself, Mr. Coronavirus having Joseph Parker, okay? Joseph Parker comes in at number 5, and that's another fight that could have happened that didn't happen, and then people don't know why it didn't happen for good money, okay? To counterpunch that, I don't know how much money that is for good money, but he could have been back at the IBF ranking since he is coming in number 5. And according to Kel, they reached out to everyone, so he applies. So crickets. Number 4 is himself for Filip Hrgovic. He can't fight himself. So next, 3, Alexander Usyk. Now, Alexander Usyk has a special situation because he is the mandatory for the WBO. Okay, so he has his slot with Anthony Joshua, which is the current IBF. So he is exempt from this, okay? Number 2, Charles Martin. Charles Martin is number 2, so I think him and Luis Ortiz and Andy Ruiz are the guys that we have to look at closely, okay? Now, to Charles Martin wants a fight with Dillian White, but he is high on the totem pole when it comes to the IBF. So if he could fight Filip Hrgovic, he could get that number 1 slot with just sitting there and languishing at number 2. Okay, so now we have Charles Martin, number 2, Filip Hrgovic, number 4. They could duke it out, right? Or anybody in the top 10, rather, and duke it out to get number 1. But then you think with Charles Martin, why would he just want to rest there instead of taking on someone like Filip Hrgovic? Well, like Kel said, I know I'm murdering his name, but just like Kel said that, that would be a risk that these guys, or Charles Martin in this case, don't want to take. And conclusion, with Filip Hrgovic, back to Michael Hunter, I will have an interview on the 28th. It's either going to be live or through Zoom, but it will be out either the 29th or the 30th. And it will be with Michael Hunter. Okay, so that's a locked-in interview and set in stone. I would rather that be live so people can ask him questions that need be, so you guys get your questions ready for Mr. Hunter, because I want to go live with that. I think that would be a better platform. So I feel also that, he has a lot of explaining to do, so it's best to hear it from him first. But he was that guy that was going to fight Filip Hrgovic for that eliminator. So he is the number 1 guy we look in first that fell from grace or decided not to fight. but ironically didn't get a fight of himself because he left that fight, which was an eliminator of the IBF, to another fight that didn't happen. So I welcome him on the channel, and I can't wait to get in touch with him. So you guys tell me what questions. In fact, I'll make a questionnaire for him. So a list of things that you can ask Mr. Hunter directly. But for all these guys, probably except for Alexander Usyk, who else? There is really no one else. Everyone, Charles Martin, Joseph Parker, Aguet Caballero, Tony Yoka, Andy Ruiz, Luis Ortiz, and Joe Joyce. These guys have said to be ducking Filip Hrgovic, okay? And this duck is a bad duck because this duck, you're ducking because you don't want to progress in that particular sanctioning body. And with the IBF, they don't play. There's no step aside. You got to fight. If everybody if every sanctioning body was like the IBF, the world would be a better place when it comes to boxing, the sport that I love, that I hate so much. So, according to Kel, that we don't have one guy ducking. We have about 9. About 8 people ducking Filip Hrgovic for a mandatory spot, for an elimination spot. So you guys tell me what you think of people ducking Filip Hrgovic. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.